Hello everyone, I am very glad that you're joining this story. Subscribe, like and comment. Enjoy the story, smile more often.
"You're not invited this Easter," my mom said in a whisper, as if lowering her voice made it less of a goddamn slap to the face. I stood in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear, staring at the fridge I bought for her last Thanksgiving because the old one died during a heat wave. Her words hit harder than I expected. And maybe that's on me. Maybe it's stupid to expect warmth from someone who's only ever known how to take. "Okay," I said, calm and slow, already feeling the burn in my chest. "But don't expect my $8,600 either." There was a long pause. The kind of silence that lets you hear things you weren't supposed to. I could almost hear Kevin's voice in the background, talking about ham or yams or whatever. My little brother, the golden screw-up. The family treasure. The man-child who still lived with them at 38 and had the balls to call himself between jobs while playing Xbox in boxers. Mom didn't say anything else. Just hung up. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Not even one of those guilt-ridden, half-assed things she does where she pretends to cry but forgets to turn on the waterworks. The funny part is, I wasn't even planning to go. Easter with my parents had become a weird tradition of forced smiles and overcooked ham. But I expected the option. I expected, at the very least, to be counted. That's the thing, right? You keep waiting for people to love you in the way you love them. You keep giving. You keep showing up. Until one day, you realize you're not part of the family gathering. You're just the goddamn ATM in the hallway. Let me rewind a little. I'm 43 years old, divorced, no kids, and I make decent money in IT. Nothing fancy, nothing flashy, but enough to live comfortably and help my parents out when they said they were drowning after Dad's second back surgery. That was 6 years ago. Since then, I've been paying the mortgage, the utilities, the internet, and even their cell phone plans. I didn't complain because that's what you do when you're raised to believe family comes first. They never asked Kevin to help. Not once. And when I brought it up, politely, mind you, Mom would get this voice like I just told her I was euthanizing her favorite dog. "Kevin's going through a rough patch," she'd say. Or, "He's not like you. He needs support, not pressure." Support. Pressure. Apparently, I was the pressure. The bad guy for asking the golden boy to pay his own damn bills. And now I wasn't invited to Easter. You have to understand, this wasn't just about ham and deviled eggs. This was tradition. My mom gets weirdly intense about holidays. Color-coded napkins, place cards, even those little bunny-shaped butter sculptures. She used to say, "Easter is about family, not religion." And now I'm not part of it. I sat down on my couch, still holding the dead phone, and stared at the blinking router light across the room. That's when it hit me. That moment where your breath catches, not from sadness, but from clarity. If I'm not family enough to sit at your table, maybe I'm not family enough to pay for your lights either. I stood up and walked to my home office. On my desk was a file folder, the big kind with tabs, filled with documents, bills, contracts, email printouts. I'm the type that keeps everything. That's not paranoia. That's survival. Over the years, I'd ended up with every major household account in my name. Gas, water, electric, internet, cell, all auto-paid through my bank account. And here's the real kicker. I even paid property taxes on the house because my parents forgot one year and nearly lost it. $8,600. That's what I'd spent over the last year alone. And now, I wasn't good enough to eat dry turkey at the table I paid for. I pulled open the control panel on my laptop and started with the easiest one. Internet. Just a few clicks. Suspended due to non-payment. Effective immediately. Then came the electric account. Same process. I didn't cancel it yet, just hit pause. They'd still get the warning emails, and when the shut-off notice came, they'd know it wasn't a mistake. It was me. The family pressure. I went back to the router and unplugged it. Not metaphorically. I literally unplugged their damn internet. Cold rage is a funny thing. It doesn't come with yelling or broken plates. It comes with quiet decisions made at 2 a.m. in your bathrobe. It comes with emails to utility companies and watching your bank account slowly stop bleeding. As I sat back down, the house was eerily quiet. No phone ringing. No texts. Not even a "why would you do this?" from Mom. That part hurt more than I'd admit. Not because I wanted her to beg, but because I realized she wouldn't. She genuinely didn't think I'd push back. She thought I'd take it, like always. Well, not this Easter. I poured myself a whiskey, neat, and toasted the silence. Let Kevin fix the power. Let him explain the outage. Let him pay a goddamn bill for once in his life. I'll be over here, doing what I should have done a long time ago. Choosing myself. And this time, I'm not whispering. I didn't sign up to be anybody's retirement plan, and yet here I am, at 43, paying for a house I don't live in, covering bills for people who barely tolerate me, and getting thanked with silence and exclusion. The story of how that happened doesn't start with anger, it starts with guilt, weaponized like a goddamn sniper rifle pointed right at my conscience. It was the spring after Dad's second back surgery, the one that took him out of work permanently, even though the truth is, he hadn't done a full day's labor since Reagan was president. Mom called me late at night, said they were in trouble. The mortgage was 3 months behind, the electric company had already sent a shut-off notice, and Kevin had just lost his job again. I should have asked more questions. I should have looked at their finances, demanded to know where the money was going, who was spending what, and why no one else was stepping up. But I didn't. I was raised to say yes, to be the good son, the one who kept the family boat afloat no matter how many holes someone else drilled in the bottom. Just until we catch up, she said, and I believed her. Like a dumbass. She even cried, voice shaking through the line like the world was about to collapse unless I saved them. And I did. I called the bank, took over the mortgage, refinanced the loan under my name to drop the interest rate, and started auto-paying it each month like it was nothing. That was 8 years ago. They've been caught up for 8 goddamn years. And the worst part is, once you start giving, it never stops being expected. Suddenly, Mom's asking if I can, temporarily, pay the electric so they can replace the fridge, which dies the next day. Then the car registration. Then Kevin's phone bill, because how can he find a job if he can't call anyone? And it always ends with that same sigh, that same line I heard so many times I could recite it in my sleep. Ryan, you're doing so well. You've always been the responsible one. Responsible is family code for sucker. For mule. For someone they can stack burdens on without ever asking if your back's about to snap in two. What really broke me wasn't the bills, though. It wasn't even the way Kevin never said thank you, or how he'd disappear for weeks, only to show up when Mom needed a new excuse to ask me for money. No. It was the day I heard him bragging to his friend about buying a brand new PS5, plus a sound system and a stack of games. Scored a killer deal, he said. Got the money saved up for my tax return. Tax return. That's what he told everyone. But I knew the truth. Mom had called me 2 weeks prior, crying about how Kevin was finally making progress, applying for jobs, and trying to get back on his feet. She said he just needed a small boost, enough for some new clothes and a better phone. You remember how hard it was when you started out, right? She'd asked, already assuming the answer was yes. I wired the money, $700, even though I had a late project, even though I'd already covered the water bill that month. And now here he was, giggling like a drunk frat boy, clicking through a menu full of games while I sat in my apartment, eating instant ramen because I didn't feel like spending money on groceries after blowing my paycheck on their mess. I did the math once. Over 10 years, I'd spent nearly $24,000 on utilities alone. Wait, no, sorry, 4,000. Whatever. Still insane. Either way, it's too damn much. Enough to buy a car. Enough to go on a real vacation. Enough to, I don't know, live. And still, they act like I owe them. They act like Kevin deserves support and I deserve silence. Every holiday, every birthday, I get the same story. Kevin's going through a hard time. Can you help a little more? It's never a question. It's a setup. Like they're waiting to see if I'll finally stop pretending we're a family that functions like it should. One Thanksgiving, I brought up the idea of Kevin getting his own apartment. Just floated it gently, like I was testing the air. Mom's face twisted like I'd suggested tossing him in a ditch. "He's not ready," she said. "You know how sensitive he is." I almost laughed. Sensitive? Kevin's been gaming in his pajamas for a decade, while I'm footing the bill and getting scolded like I'm the problem. Now Easter's around the corner, and I'm not even invited. I thought about that while standing in line at the grocery store, holding a frozen pizza and a six-pack, watching some kid in front of me buy plastic eggs and jelly beans. I used to love Easter. Not for the church or the food, but for the idea that, for one day, we all came together and acted like a family. That illusion's gone now. Like everything else, it's just one more thing they took without asking. My phone buzzed while I was at the checkout. A missed call from Mom. Then another. Then a text from her that said, "Call me. Kevin's in trouble." I didn't call. I didn't even read the next message until I got home. Kevin had crashed the car. The one still registered in my name. The one I'd been paying insurance on for years. And just like that, I knew. Knew I wasn't the son anymore. I was the wallet. The safety net. The guy they called when the golden boy fell again, like he always does, face first into someone else's responsibility. I looked at the phone, then at the darkened laptop screen. And I smiled. Because I had a new plan. When the text came through that Kevin had wrecked the car, I didn't even blink. I just tossed my phone on the counter like it was a bad fortune cookie I didn't bother opening. There's a certain kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from work or age or lack of sleep. It comes from years of being expected to carry the load, fix the mess, and never, ever complain while doing it. I had reached that point. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in a cold, calculated one that made everything suddenly very, very clear. I didn't care if he was hurt. That probably makes me sound like a heartless bastard, but I'd argue you can't keep showing up for someone who's made a hobby out of letting you down. I'd cared for years. I cared through every DUI, every late rent notice, every time he borrowed a few $100 and then posted pictures online of some night out with drinks that cost more than my groceries. I cared when it still hurt. But now? Now it just felt like static. I opened my laptop and typed "account" into the email search bar. That's when it really hit me, just how deep I'd let myself sink into this family illusion. The first result was an email from 6 years ago, subject line, "Need your help, urgent." It was from Mom, full of her usual guilt-soaked phrasing. "We're just swamped," she wrote. "Can you help set up the utilities in your name? It's just easier for paperwork and taxes." She made it sound temporary, like one of those things that would sort itself out eventually. Once Dad was better, once Kevin was back on his feet, once the stars aligned and pigs flew. I clicked through the inbox, watching the receipts and confirmations pile up like some kind of twisted timeline. Electricity? My name. Water? Also me. Internet? Same. I even found the Comcast login from when Mom locked herself out and I had to reset the password remotely from my office. She never once asked to take those accounts back. Not once. Because she knew I'd keep paying. Because deep down, she probably figured I'd never push back. Well, she figured wrong. The first thing I did was pull up the electric provider site. It was like flipping a switch in my own mind. I wasn't just cutting power to their house, I was flipping off the part of myself that kept pretending everything was okay. I logged in, navigated to the suspension options, and clicked the box marked "Temporary Shutoff due to non-payment." The irony made me laugh out loud. I had to pretend like I was broke just to make a point. Next came the water account, which was a little trickier. There was some dumb confirmation code they had to text to the account holder's number, which, thankfully, was still mine. I waited for the ping, entered the digits, and initiated the shutdown request. Estimated shutoff, 24 to 48 hours. Just enough time for them to notice, to squirm, to wonder who the hell turned off the faucet. Maybe even enough time for Kevin to take a break from gaming and realize showers don't run on entitlement. Then came the internet. This one felt personal. Not because it cost the most, but because it had become a symbol in that house. It was the umbilical cord between Kevin and the rest of the world. His lifeline to streaming platforms, his online games, his late-night Reddit arguments about crypto he never actually invested in. I logged into the account, hovered over the suspend service button, and clicked it without blinking. Done. 3 utilities gone in under 20 minutes. I was starting to feel something that scared me a little, not guilt, not sadness, but satisfaction. A quiet, growing sense of justice. Like maybe for once, the scales were tipping in the other direction. Like maybe I wasn't the bad guy after all, just someone who finally decided he was done bleeding out slowly for people who didn't even know they were holding the knife. I poured myself a drink and opened the phone bill app. This was the one that made me pause. Not because I didn't want to shut it off, but because of what it represented. Their cell phones were their last point of contact. If I cut that, I wasn't just flipping a switch, I was drawing a hard line in the dirt. But then I remembered last Christmas. I remembered sitting there, watching Kevin open the new phone I had paid for, again, under the guise of helping him stay connected for job interviews, only to overhear him telling his girlfriend later that night how Ryan's just too soft to ever say no. That stuck with me. Not just because of what he said, but because of how casual it was. Like kindness was a flaw. Like I was some sucker, born to bankroll their laziness. I hovered over the option to suspend the service, and just as I was about to click, my phone buzzed on the counter. I picked it up, and there it was, one message, short and sour. Please call us. We need to talk. Kevin's in trouble. No punctuation. No signature. Just urgency and vagueness, and that same old pattern, mess up, reach out, expect me to fix it. I stared at the screen for a long time, letting the silence stretch out between us like a rope someone finally stopped pulling. I didn't call back. Not yet. I wasn't done. But something told me this trouble wasn't like the others. Something about the phrasing, the timing, the cold chill that crept up my neck while reading it, it all told me this wasn't just a fender bender or a bounce check. This felt heavier. Maybe for the first time, Kevin's screw-up had real consequences. And part of me wanted to know what happened. But the bigger part? The bigger part wanted to see what they'd do without me. There's a certain kind of silence that creeps into your bones after betrayal, the kind that doesn't just whisper in your ears, but sits in your chest like wet concrete. That was the silence I was sitting in the next morning, drinking reheated coffee and staring at the ceiling like maybe the cracks in the drywall could explain how the hell I got here. My phone buzzed on the counter, another message from Mom, unread and uncared for, while the TV played some morning show I wasn't really watching. I knew I wasn't going to respond. Not until I was ready. Not until I decided what came next. And as fate would have it, I did have something else to check. Months ago, during one of my better attempts to still be the helpful son, I'd installed a camera in the living room of my parents' house. It wasn't for spying, not at first. I told myself it was for emergencies. Dad had fallen once while Mom was out getting groceries, and they didn't have any way of contacting help. So I bought a discreet little indoor cam, one that sat up on the shelf behind a vase no one had touched in 10 years, connected it to an app on my phone, and set it to notify me only if motion was detected while no one was supposed to be home. I figured it would just give me peace of mind, something to glance at every now and then when I hadn't heard from them in a while. I hadn't opened the app in weeks. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe it was the growing fire in my gut that wanted answers, but I picked up my phone and tapped into the live feed. Nothing unusual. Just an empty living room, same ugly throw pillows, same dusty TV stand, same little wooden cross on the wall that was supposed to symbolize something sacred. I switched over to the playback feature and began scrolling back through the last few days, the motion-triggered clips stacking up like unsent letters. And then I saw it. It was from 2 nights before they uninvited me for Easter. The timestamp said it was around 9:30 in the evening. The lights were dimmed, and Kevin was sprawled out on the couch, feet up on the coffee table like he owned the damn place, a beer in one hand and his phone in the other. Mom sat in the recliner across from him, knitting or pretending to, eyes flicking up every few seconds to whatever trash was on the TV. Then Kevin said something that made me freeze mid-sip. "Think he'll still cover the gas bill this month?" he asked, laughing, like it was a joke between friends, not something you said about the brother who's been paying your bills for half a decade. Mom chuckled too, not missing a beat. "Just play the sad card," she said, waving a hand like she was brushing off a fly. You know how he is. He's a sucker for that. Kevin snorted, leaning back with the kind of smugness that only comes from someone who's never faced real consequences. You think he suspects anything? He asked. She shrugged like it didn't matter. Even if he did, what's he gonna do? Stop paying? He doesn't have the guts. He needs us to need him. That's when I stopped the playback. For a long time, I just sat there, holding the phone like it was a snake I didn't know had fangs. My hands weren't shaking. I wasn't even angry. That was the strangest part. I just felt vacant. Like whatever piece of me still believed this could be fixed had finally given up and walked out of the room. It's one thing to be used. It's another thing entirely to be mocked for letting it happen. I watched it again. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to remember every word, every smirk, every little moment of joy they got from draining me dry. I wanted it seared into my memory, not as pain, but as fuel. And that's when the plan solidified. Cutting off the utilities had been satisfying. It was a power move, sure. But now I saw the truth. Cutting the power wasn't enough. These people had built their whole rotten life inside a house I paid for, laughed in chairs I'd replaced, watched TV on a flat screen I bought them for Christmas because their old one was flickering. Every damn thing in that house had my name underneath it, even if no one wanted to admit it. But there was one thing they didn't know. The house was in my name. It had been from the beginning. When I refinanced it during that whole back surgery crisis, I had to put it under my credit because theirs was shot to hell. They didn't argue. Mom actually thanked me, told me I was saving the family home. What she didn't know, or what she conveniently forgot, was that when the paperwork went through, I became the legal owner. They were essentially living rent-free in a place I legally owned. And I had the title to prove it. So I pulled out the file box, dusted it off, flipped to the right tab, and found the deed with my name on it in big, bold letters. Ryan James Langford, sole owner. I made 3 calls that day. 1 to a real estate attorney, 1 to a property agent, and 1 to a locksmith. The house was going on the market by the end of the week. No more half measures. No more warnings. No more paying to be insulted behind my back. I would give them 30 days notice, and then they could figure out where to go. Kevin could finally see what it felt like to be a grown-up. Mom could cry to someone else for a change. I wasn't doing it to be cruel. I was doing it to survive. Because if I didn't, I'd stay stuck in their little ecosystem of guilt and manipulation until the day I died, probably alone, probably bitter, probably still footing the electric bill. No, not anymore. As I signed the initial listing papers and scanned them back to the agent, my phone buzzed again. Another message. Same number. No subject. Just 6 words. We need to talk. It's serious. I stared at the screen for a while. Then I closed the app. They'd said enough already. Easter morning arrived with a certain heaviness in the air, not the kind that comes from storm clouds or sickness, but the slow, suffocating weight of a long overdue reckoning that no one really sees coming until it's already settled on their shoulders. I was awake before the sun even climbed up over the rooftops, coffee in hand, suitcase already packed, boarding pass printed and tucked inside my jacket like a winning lottery ticket I hadn't told anyone about. The living room smelled like fresh dust and disuse, not because I'd let it go, but because for the first time in years, I had an invited obligation to come live with me. Outside, the morning was quiet, eerily so, for a holiday that usually meant the whole damn neighborhood buzzing with folding chairs, paper plates, and someone burning deviled eggs for the 3rd year in a row. I glanced across the street at Carol's place, her plastic pastel lawn decorations already swaying in the breeze like overexcited kids waving down the ice cream truck. She was out front, robe on, watering her flower beds and doing that exaggerated lean she always did when pretending not to stare directly at my door. I didn't wave. She didn't either. But the message was clear. We both knew today would be different. Susan and Mike, my parents, for those still hanging onto the illusion that we shared something more than DNA, had gone radio silent since that last text. I hadn't answered. Didn't call. Didn't even feel the itch in my fingers to do so. And Kevin? Not a peep. Either he was too busy trying to fix what couldn't be fixed or still convinced I'd show up with an apology and another check like I always had before. But this time, the check bounced, not from the bank, but from somewhere deeper. That place inside me that had finally, gloriously run dry. I already knew how the morning would go before it even started. They'd wake up confused. First the lights wouldn't come on. Then the water would sputter out halfway through washing a dish Kevin left in the sink 2 nights ago. No internet meant no streaming, no browsing, no distractions. And then they'd remember the phone service was dead too, which meant no easy calls, no last-minute pleading, no lazy texts asking if I could help out just this once. Eventually, they'd gather their things, whatever they hadn't pawned or broken, and pack into Kevin's half-dead car, heading toward his one-bedroom apartment across town. I imagined Mom already plotting how to stage a modest but heartfelt Easter dinner there, maybe even guilt Kevin into skipping out on rent so they could afford a sad little ham and some discount store decorations. There'd be folding chairs, a card table too small for 3 people, and a window cracked open because the heat had been turned off with the rest of their dignity. And that's exactly when Carol called me. She always had a knack for timing, always knew when drama was about to unfold and couldn't resist getting in her 2 cents or 50. My phone buzzed as I zipped my suitcase, her name glowing on the screen like a smug little warning bell. I answered on the 3rd ring, already smirking. "Ryan," she said, that faux sweet tone of someone who definitely had gossip loaded like bullets in a chamber. "Did something happen across the street?" I saw Susan and Mike leaving with garbage bags and that big old cooler. Kevin was driving. They didn't look happy. I took a long sip of my coffee before answering. "They'll be fine," I said, calm and easy. "Just downsizing." She hesitated, as if sensing the weight behind those 2 words. "You, heading somewhere?" "Mexico," I said, already walking toward the front door. "Beach, tequila, maybe some reflection. Or maybe just sunburn and silence. Either way, better than here." She didn't ask anything else after that. I closed the door behind me, rolled my suitcase down the steps, and slid into the back seat of the Uber waiting at the curb. The driver was quiet, which I appreciated. My mind was loud enough for both of us. The airport was about 30 minutes away, which gave me just enough time to think about everything I wasn't going to say to them. No letters. No calls. No justifications. Just a clean break. Or it would have been. As I stood in line at security, shoes in one hand, passport in the other, my phone buzzed again. This time I looked. It was a text from my mother. 6 words. Just 6. I was wrong. Come home. That was it. No punctuation. No context. Just a white flag in digital form, folded and sent across years of disappointment like it could erase everything with one desperate breath. I stared at it. And for a moment, just a moment, I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the screen, pulse creeping into my ears like the sound of an old wound reopening. I thought about Christmases spent pretending, birthdays that felt more like chores, the countless times I covered for Kevin while she whispered about what a good heart he had. I thought about watching them on that camera, laughing at me like I was some joke with a wallet. But I also thought about being a kid in that house, back before it all went sour, when Easter meant plastic eggs hidden in the backyard, and my dad grilling burgers while Mom played her scratched-up Elton John CD through the kitchen window. I thought about moments that still stung, not because they were bad, but because they were good, and they made what followed hurt so much worse. I stared at the message a little longer. Then I locked the screen and slid the phone into my pocket without replying. The boarding call echoed through the terminal. As I stepped forward, bag in hand and gate in sight, a small, satisfied smile crept across my face. They'll figure it out eventually. Probably around the same time they realized the house title was always in my name. Happy Easter, assholes.